I wanted to thank everyone for the interest in my experiences in Mineral Wells, Texas. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share them. Please keep in mind that although all of these various experiences may not fit together logically or chronologically, I think they are all part of a larger puzzle which I am still putting together. One day, about 4 months after the incident at Baker Hotel, my partner and I were called to a disturbance at the Veterans Affairs building on Southeast 6th Avenue. Sometimes we would switch shifts with the day patrol, and this was on one of those days. When we arrived, there were a crowd of people outside, most of whom looked visibly shaken. As we approached the door, I understood why. The sounds coming from inside were downright terrifying. Deep, guttural moans and screams emanated through the air. The sounds were so unnatural that we could not make an initial determination whether the person making them was male or female. If I'm being honest, at the time I was unsure whether they were even human. We entered into the foyer with pistols drawn and quickly cleared it and the surrounding rooms. All of the employees had made it outside, which was good. I immediately noticed the air inside had a strangely cold, damp quality to it. Unheard of for summer in Texas, even with the air on. And maybe it was just my imagination, but the sound seemed to not be coming from the office at the back of the building, but also from the walls around us. And what was the other thing? Whispers? I glanced at my partner, but he seemed wholly focused on the door in front of us. We moved forward to check the handle and found that it was locked. We announced ourselves, but it was soon clear the person inside had no interest in opening the door. My partner, being larger, leaned back and then drove his foot right into the handle of the door, breaking the door frame and sending the cheap door flying inwards. For a split second, I know this sounds crazy, but I could have sworn the man inside was wearing a long white doctor's coat and white mask over his mouth. A half second later, the image in my mind was gone, and before us stood a visibly disturbed older gentleman wearing green fatigues and brandishing a letter opener. It was one of those relatively large but dull kinds that you get from the Rotary Club. What little hair he had left was sticking straight out of his head, like when you rub your hair against a balloon. He was babbling, mostly incoherently, but we could make out a few words between the moans and cries. "Not the water again. Not the water. It's cold, so cold. It's time for your treatment. I'm a better boy, so much better. I won't run. I won't." He moved quickly, raising the hand with the letter opener. My partner yelled out, "Drop it!" as we aimed our firearms in unison. Then, without warning, the man placed his hand palm down on the desk next to him and drove the letter opener into the back of his hand with such force that it somehow pierced the wood on the desk. He looked straight at us with pale face, eyes cold and wide with fear, and gasped, "He's coming," and collapsed to the floor. I stayed with the man while my partner ran outside to grab the paramedics. When I was doing my final sweep of the office, I managed to notice a large, half-empty box of mineral water, collected and bottled right here in town by the Crazy Minerals Company. I grabbed a bottle and shoved it into my pocket. As the paramedics were wheeling him out, their initial explanation for his actions was possible early signs of dementia, by the way. My partner called my attention to a small brass sign that had been erected on the outside of the building. It read, "Millings Sanitarium, National Register of Historic Places, Mineral Wells, Texas, 1929. After the incident at Veterans Affairs, I wanted to learn all I could about Mineral Wells, and about a week later, I went to the Historical Society on my day off, as I mentioned in part 1, to learn about its unusual history. Later that night, I found myself alone, as usual, in my apartment, deep in thought. I tried not to think about what had happened with the old man, but I couldn't push it out of my mind. It was so strange, and the fact that the building had been a sanitarium at one point made it even stranger. At this point, I wasn't even sure I believed in ghosts or the undead, but what had happened sure pointed me to some kind of possession. The only thing I really knew, that I had experienced two otherworldly events, neither of which seemed to be connected, but together seemed to point to something sinister going on in Mineral Wells. What was causing these terrible things to happen, and what connection did they have, if any, to the history of the town? And what did the crazy water have to do with it? I considered leaving Mineral Wells briefly, but then scrapped that idea. I was going to stay and do what I was hired to do, which was to protect and serve the citizens of this great state of Texas, and possibly, if I was lucky, start figuring out what the grand secret that seemed to be lurking just beneath the surface. I decided that plan would start with my partner, Officer James Orr, a 15-year veteran of the Mineral Wells Police Department and a long-life resident of Mineral Wells. The next night, while on patrol, I brought up the subject of the man at Veteran Affairs to James. "Crazy old man, huh?" he said. "He almost got himself shot." "Did you notice anything strange about him?" I asked pensively. At this point, I wasn't planning on admitting what I had seen and heard, fearing he would think I was a lunatic. "Other than the fact that he stabbed himself with a dull letter opener? Not really. It was a little cold in that office, but that's not odd. Weird shit like that happens in Mineral Wells sometimes. It's kind of a running joke around here, you know. I'm sure you've heard of the crazy water." He laughed as he said it, so I was pretty sure he didn't buy into anything out of the ordinary. "You drink that stuff?" I asked. I certainly didn't. I wasn't planning to anytime soon. "Sure, everybody here drinks it. It has an odd taste, but you're used to it. My grandmother's family moved here in the 1920s, believe it or not, to see if the crazy water could cure my great-grandmother's schizophrenia. It was a snake oil salesman's heyday back then. The mineral water was supposed to cure anything and everything, and I know my great-grandmother had to make great sacrifices to get here. I'm not sure whether it worked or not, but she died here sometime after giving birth to my grandmother in 1931. I still have an old picture of her standing in front of one of the crazy wells. You know, it's funny. I haven't admitted this to anyone before, so don't think I'm crazy. It was several years before you got here. I responded to a strange call involving an old woman who had taken too many of her pills and was worried she was going to die. Ellie, I think her name was. After I arrived, I called poison control to make sure she was going to be okay. The woman on the line stated that Ellie should be checked out if she started feeling ill, but the quantity that she took was not lethal. I comforted her a bit and was about to leave, but she stopped me dead in my tracks with a peculiar story. She said that she was about to take her pills, and a young lady had instructed her to take the entire bottle. Dump them all down my throat, as she had put it. For some reason, she had listened, and had taken about a fourth of the bottle before snapping out of it. Confused, I asked her who the young lady was. She said, matter-of-factly, "The lady that watches me through the window." Odd, right? So naturally I asked her which window it was, and she said it was the one in her bedroom. Now, this lady was probably in her 80s. I was most likely demented, but I still wanted to check out and make sure no one was in the house. I walked back to the bedroom and opened the door, and for a split second I thought I saw a face in the window across from the bedroom door. The next moment it was gone. I searched the room, the closet, and the bathroom, but no one was there, aside from a slightly strange smell, which I attributed to the age of the house and its contents. Nothing was amiss. I checked outside. No one to be found. The place was empty except for the owner, and there was no sign that anybody had been inside the house. The craziest thing, the face I saw, I swear, I will go to the grave with this memory. It was the exact same face I've seen 1,000 times, standing in front of that damn mineral well. It was my great-grandmother's.